Philemon, Introduction. Matthew Henry's Commentary on the Whole Bible. An exposition, with practical observations, of the Epistle of St. Paul to Philemon. Introduction. This epistle to Philemon is placed the last of those with the name of Paul to them, perhaps because the shortest, and of an argument peculiar and different from all the others, yet such as the Spirit of God, who indited it, saw would, in its kind, be very instructive and useful in the churches. The occasion of it was this: of Philemon, one of note and probably a minister in the church of Colossus, a city of Phrygia, had a servant named Onesimus, who, having purloined his goods, ran away from him, and in his rambles came to Rome, where Paul was then a prisoner for the gospel, and, providentially coming under his preaching there, was, by the blessing of God, converted by him, after which he ministered a while to the apostle in bonds, and might have been further useful to him, but, understanding him to be another man's servant, Paul would not, without his consent, detain him, but sends him back with this letter commendatory, wherein he earnestly sues for his pardon and kind reception. Before we enter on the exposition, such general things as follow may be taken notice of from the epistle and what relates to it, namely: 1. The goodness and mercy of God to a poor wandering sinner, bringing him by his gracious providence under the means, and making them effectual to his conversion. Thus came he to be sought of him that asked not for him, and to be found of him that sought him not. Isaiah 65 verse 1. 2. The great and endeared affection between a true convert and him whom God used to be the instrument of his conversion. Paul regards this poor fugitive now as his son in the faith, and terms him his own bowels, and Onesimus readily serves Paul in prison, and would gladly have continued to do so, would duty have permitted, but, being another's servant, he must return and submit himself to his master, and be at his disposal. 3. The tender and good spirit of this blessed apostle Paul. With what earnestness does he concern himself for the poor slave! Being now, through his preaching, reconciled to God, he labors for reconciliation between him and his master. How pathetic a letter does he here write in his behalf! Scarcely any argument is forgotten that could possibly be used in the case, and all are pressed with such force that, had it been the greatest favor to himself that he was asking, he could not have used more. For, the remarkable providence of God in preserving such a short writing as this, that might be thought of little concern to the church, being not only a letter to a particular person, as those to Timothy, and Titus, and Gaius, and the elect lady, likewise were, but of a private personal matter, namely, the receiving of a poor fugitive servant into the favor and family of his injured master. What in this is there that concerns the common salvation? And yet over this has there been a special divine care, it being given, as the other scriptures were, by inspiration of God, and in some sort, as they are, profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and for instruction in righteousness. To such purposes may this epistle have been written and preserved. And perhaps, to such purposes may this epistle have been written and preserved. And perhaps, 5. There may be something further in all this, at least, by way of allusion, it is applicable to the mediation and intercession of Christ for poor sinners. We, like Onesimus, were revolters from God's service, and had injured him in his rights. Jesus Christ finds us, and by his grace works a change in us, and then intercedes for us with the Father, that we may be received into his favor and family again, and past offenses may be forgiven, and we are sure that the Father heareth him always. There is no reason to doubt but Paul prevailed with Philemon to forgive and receive Onesimus, and more reason have we to be confident that the intercession of Christ with the Father is prevalent for the acceptance of all whose case he takes in hand and recommends to him. From these general observations we come to the epistle itself.